Welcome to Beyond Food and Wine, a Le Cordon Bleu podcast. In this podcast, we get some real insight into the food and hospitality industry from a variety of renowned chefs, industry experts, and Le Cordon Bleu alumni. Join us as we hear the fascinating stories and unique experiences behind some of the best-known names in the industry. Hello, I'm delighted to be joined today by Elaine McCarthy, who is Programme Development Manager for Le Cordon Bleu London. Thank you very much for joining me today, Elaine. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks, Freya. Thank you for having me on the show. Good to speak to you today.
My pleasure, absolutely. So you've got a really rich and varied history in hospitality. Can you tell me how you started out in the business?
Yeah, sure. I've been working for Le Cordon Bleu for 10 years now, and that's been a very exciting journey and discovery of the global culinary and hospitality education industry. But I suppose before I got there, I started working in hospitality many years ago, about 1995 in Ireland, when I was still studying in school. And I had a great interest in food and culture then, and I started off working kind of at a very basic level in a local restaurant, washing dishes and doing prep work, and where I actually learned a lot about Italian cuisine and the specialized restaurant industry, working with local ingredients. And that's where my culinary journey, I suppose, began, and the love of the industry. And I was instantly hooked on the fast-paced environment. A lot of activity. It was very exhilarating and energizing, and I really enjoyed working with people and food, learning a lot about wine, customer service, and particularly about cooking and quality ingredients. So I worked there for a few years and then moved on to the remote Aran Islands off Ireland into a beautiful seafood restaurant, and worked there during the summer. And that kind of very much got me on my culinary journey in that side of things. And then I went, which took me to England to study culinary arts, and to America, where I spent a year working on a wilderness resort way out in the Ozarks, working in bakery, restaurants, smokehouses, banqueting, and really kind of exploring the entirety of the industry. And after that, I returned to Ireland and moved into more of the front of house part of the industry, where I worked as assistant restaurant manager and then the restaurant manager of the Adair Manor Hotel in Ireland, which is a very beautiful castle. And there was a great opportunity to then learn about the luxurious side of the industry, service, managing a team. It was one of the leading hotels of the world, so the standards were very high. And that was very rewarding in terms of interacting with customers and meeting people and learning, I suppose, learning and running and managing a team with a very kind of positive experience with teamwork and excellent service, and creating a really good experience for customers. So I did have a great love for travel, and I went to Australia and Southeast Asia, again, kind of looking more at kind of the food and culture side. And I really kind of, at that point, at a young age, I decided I wanted to run my own restaurant. And the opportunity came up in my early 20s to do that. And I suppose, plunged in, unknowing what was ahead of me, and opened a 50-seater restaurant there, focusing on local ingredients. And we had lots of organic farmers, great cheeses, seafood, delivered daily, beautiful oysters and mussels. There was a duck farm, a venison farm. So there was really a whole lot to discover in that area at the time. And the hospitality industry was booming in Ireland. There was a great food culture, was very explosive, and people were very much kind of appreciating that evening dining, knowing more about food and that experience. So it was really kind of trying to create a relaxed atmosphere, and it was a fascinating experience, kind of renovating a building, designing a food concept, and it was very challenging. But luckily I had a great team. So running that kind of for for a decade, and I then took a break and leased out the business and headed off to South America and to India to for a year or more, really kind of exploring the different cuisines of those regions. And then I came back to London for a short stint, and worked in some more restaurants and did a little bit more traveling. And I then undertook a master's in culinary innovation. And from there, I got into the education side.
So you really packed in as much as you could, it sounds like.
Absolutely, a lot of travel, a lot of work, and yeah, it was a whirlwind adventure. Yes.
Fantastic. Oh, it sounds amazing.
Great places.
So, yeah. So why did you decide to move into a career in education, and what kind of sparked that? Where did it start?
I guess I was very interested in a more of a global career. I'd really loved running a business, but I suppose I wanted to travel more and expand more into the culinary arts and how food and culture, innovation and business were integrated together. And I was also very keen on teaching and studying more myself and kind of getting more and more involved. So I had this desire to begin teaching, and got an opportunity with a culinary school in Switzerland, and moved there, and that was a very exciting experience with, again, some travel to different locations and experiencing the Swiss culture, and working in kind of that more I suppose luxurious hospitality side of things. And then shortly afterwards, the opportunity came up to move to Le Cordon Bleu, which was very exciting because it was very culinary focused. There was a great opportunity for project management and using all of the education that I had kind of undergone myself at that stage, with degrees, masters and other things in nutrition and project management. So it was quite exciting to be able to use my own experience and then bring that kind of into teaching first of all, and then into what I'm doing now in the terms of program development.
Fantastic. Really serendipitous, that kind of thing that just moves into the right place at the right time.
Things happen, yeah, absolutely.
So can you share a little bit of an insight into what your role at Le Cordon Bleu London involves, or Le Cordon Bleu generally, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. So my base is London, and I've been working with the team in London for a very long time. My role has developed over the years, and I work quite extensively with our international schools, so that brings that kind of global perspective from different styles of education all around the world, and different processes that are required. So I'm involved in many different projects in terms of, I suppose, designing programs. One of the kind of programs that started off with, we did the diploma in culinary management, working with a great team of chefs, and which is essentially a roadmap for chefs who wanted to who have gone through their training and wish to go into food businesses and become entrepreneurs. So I suppose hospitality professionals are very active and passionate and creative people. So kind of drawing that into education is quite an exciting challenge, and brings a very different style of, I suppose, learning to the typical classroom that we do in Le Cordon Bleu. It's not necessarily kind of standing up giving lectures and orders. It's a very creative and enhancive space. So my role really is creating new programs, project management, implementation of the curriculum development, working on many different projects for different styles, and particularly in the educational design and how to achieve the learning outcomes, looking at different types of assessments to make the assessment process exciting and interesting. looking at kind of the scope and the discipline and breaking down a discipline such as nutrition or gastronomy or plant-based cuisine, and breaking that down into the different aspects that need to be learned and how they need to be brought into a curriculum. And that's quite challenging because students are always very excited about the end product or what they're going to achieve, but underneath that there's many different layers in terms of the structure of the learning and how skills can be honed. Practice in the stages that they really need to kind of understand the true underpinning knowledge. And that's why at Le Cordon Bleu we have a great team of chefs from many different backgrounds in terms of high-end restaurants, hotels, food product development, working all over the world and at a very high level. So it's very interesting when it comes down to developing programs, because there's an expectation that students have that they want to achieve, but we've got to then go into the depth and build and do the building blocks, which are very transferable skills, but there's quite a sequence and I suppose specialization in how the programs are designed.
Yeah, it sounds a lot more complicated than it might appear on the surface.
Yeah, when you get the end product and you're reading the brochures, there's a lot has happened before that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's fantastic. And I mean, this is a mean question. The last question was mean as well, because how do you kind of put something into a few words, essentially? But can you give us an idea of how a program comes into being? So where does it start from? What's the kind of spark that brings it into being?
Yeah, it's the industry itself is moving so fast. There's almost kind of a natural progression and a list of what's going to be the next thing. So
yeah,
it's an evolving process that I suppose in a sense happens quite naturally. So I suppose to give an example of that would be when we created our diploma in culinary management, where all of our students were designing their own businesses, and they were going through the program where they each had their own concept. And then those concepts were, they were building their concepts. So they were learning about food costing, they were learning about marketing, all through kind of the central focus of their own concept design. So as we kind of, that was a very well-established program. And what we started realizing is that what our students wanted was that many of them were looking at, I suppose, high-end restaurants to begin with. And then it suddenly started to change where they were looking at more health-based, health-focused. They were looking at nutrition. They were drawing in different aspects and different trends into their concept. So what we kind of understood then is that we needed to start teaching more on gastronomy. We started in terms of the nutritional side, in terms of plant-based culinary arts and these things. So as we kind of gradually moved through, we realized kind of what the next program was going to be. And after that, it was the gastronomy, nutrition and food trends, which is a very exciting program because we were bringing in kind of the science of nutrition. We were bringing dietitians and chefs together, both of them who talk about food and work in food continuously, but not necessarily working together. So that was very exciting, and our students in that program are very involved in designing products and looking at how they can create more health-based, nutritional-focused products. And then from that program, there was the trend for plant-based culinary arts was really up and coming. So we started working on the development of that program. So it's a very involved process, and it's an evolving process where we kind of identify the need, and then we start looking at, okay, well, what are the goals and objectives from this, and what do we need our students to really learn? Because we're a French culinary school, and it's really built in the depths of the French tradition and the documentation of the French culinary skills, which is extremely important within any culinary program that we develop. So we really kind of focus on the techniques and skills. Then we start developing the curriculum, looking at the objectives and the content and how we're going to assess it, how we can make this all of these kind of learning aspects more interesting, looking at who we'd want to come in and do as speakers, what would the group discussions look like, what would the case studies be like, and what would the hands-on activities be. And then we have to do a lot of research ourselves. So there a group of chefs that go out there and are going to be involved in the program. There's usually some lead chefs on each program, and they get involved in the research and the specialities, such as learning more about fermentation, and then of course there's always chefs within the team who have got their own personal passions as well, and we incorporate that very much into our programs, because we do have so many skills within what we're doing. So we identify the needs, and then we determine how we're going to deliver it, if it's going to be in the classroom, demonstrations, practical classes, if it's going to be more of an online program, which has been very successful in the last few years, or if it's going to be hybrid or both. And then we develop our timeline and we test the program, and there's a huge scene of recipe testing and tasting and photography and all of these parts that all happen kind of well behind the scenes before we're ready to launch and then begin to evaluate how well the program's working.
That's really
so that's a very brief rundown.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sure that we can get the idea of just how involved and how complicated it is, but it really must be a fascinating process doing all of that kind of research into the specific.
It's very interesting. There's a lot of trial and error. Yeah, it is. The research part is quite fascinating to kind of go into the academic side and see what the scientists are saying, to look at what the chefs are saying, looking at different types of restaurants around the world and what's up and coming and what people are doing out there. And there's some really fascinating research kind of kitchens out there now, and a lot of people who had very successful restaurants are actually kind of going into more of the research and development side now, and there's a lot of fascinating material being produced that we can then kind of incorporate into our programs, invite people for guest speakers, and so it's a very interesting space.
Absolutely. Well, I suppose one of the major things for the planet, but also specifically for hospitality is sustainability, and researching and developing products that can be used as alternatives and things that use up less land and water and resources in general. And what changes or impact have you seen in the industry as a result of that?
Yeah, this is a huge area for hospitality. It's extremely important. I suppose we look at it from many different angles. We're looking at how we can incorporate food waste education. We really do kind of draw that into our programs now, and when students are developing their own concepts, we do look at different ways of how they can assess their waste, and portion control, and composting, how they can manage leftover food, and developing concepts that look into utilizing orange peels or extracting flavors and different aspects like that. So that's very much a big part of it. Energy consumption, of course, is huge. Looking at different kind of styles of lighting, it's a huge expense to run and operate a restaurant. Yeah. So of course that's going to be a big interest area from consumption and from a financial aspect for people who want to open up their own restaurants. And also the energy that's consumed in sourcing, and looking at sustainable sourcing options. And we do find that our students are very, very aware of that, and they really are kind of drawing in on looking at their concepts and what they want to do to really kind of make a difference, or have that as an impact. Water and plastic, of course, are two other big topics, and sustainable sourcing, local and organic fair trade products, and this at one point we would have considered that as a trend, whereas now it's the norm, and it's the industry's environmental impact is not something that we're talking about in kind of a trend fashion aspect anymore, of that, it's almost an expectation rather than an ambition now. We have to be there, and of course the transportation is important as well. But there's a lot of new innovations coming up, kind of even beyond that. I think there'll be a lot more on food waste reduction. I think we're going to see a lot more on kind of certification programs to really enhance sustainable tourism, and energy efficient appliances. I think will be a really, really big move in the next few years, so that our ovens, our appliances, our refrigeration, how we're using dishwashers. I think there's going to be huge innovation in that space, to really kind of have an impact on how we can use the heat that's generated in a kitchen, and how ghost kitchens are being designed. The design of kitchens, design and customer experience is really the key to that, because not only is it an expectation, customers are also demanding it. So it's an interesting and good space that we're in with that, but there's a lot of work still to be done for sure.
Yeah, I imagine it must take, a lot longer to actually implement these changes, even when there is demand for it, especially if it involves technology.
Yes, it does. There's a lot of great ideas, and it takes time to design and implement. And as soon as you've kind of got something in place, there's something new there and there's something better. So it's constantly changing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredibly competitive as well. So do you think that's the next big change or trend in the way that we cook and eat, is going to be kind of a more energy efficient way of doing things, or is there anything else that you think is on the horizon?
Yeah, I would definitely say technology is going to have a massive impact. I think that's a given. AI, smarter appliances are changing over time, and particularly in the space for preparing and serving food. And I think technology will also help with less administration. The smart designs from artificial intelligence, and that will certainly help, so that hopefully in the industry we can focus more time on service and creativity, and less on administration. So that would be a great side to that type of technology that's coming, as well as the equipment and appliances. I think one of the other big things, plants is really important. So we talk hugely about plant-based culinary arts and cuisine and pastry, and the plants we have around the world are quite magical. They have many medicinal properties, flavors, natural extractions. I think, and kind of how a lot of plants are wasted or underutilized or unknown. So there's huge research happening in terms of plants and the culinary uses of plants. So I think that is kind of going to be definitely one of the big areas that we're going to evolve even more on. The plant-based trend has been around for a while, but I think this kind of medicinal properties and really looking at plants in a more kind of scientific way and bringing that in will be really important. And I think grains as well is another one. Across the world there's a lot of grains like Fornio or high protein grains that are underutilized. And I think that will become very, very important as well. And there's lots of other things like personalized nutrition and 3D printing, vertical farms, food sharing platforms, different types of packaging. I think these are other kind of big trends that are present but evolving, and will evolve even more in the next few years, given what research is happening out there in those places.
I mean, do you think, because quite a lot of the trends seem to be kind of more around convenience and fast tracking our food experience, do you think that that's going to take things away from a traditional service industry, or do you think people will still want that kind of experience side of things, where they're sitting in a restaurant and it's the kind of traditional approach to restaurant service?
I think it's both. I don't think traditional restaurant will ever disappear.
Yeah.
I think there's more of an expectation on the experience, that it's got to be very good if people are going to go to restaurants and sit down and spend a few hours, and it's really that customer experience is really important. So I think it's going to get even better. There's a lot of emphasis on kind of innovation and that kind of style, but I think kind of the traditional restaurant, and particularly when you travel around the world, if you go to Paris or you go to Spain and you're in London or anywhere else in the world, everyone still enjoys going out for dinner. And I think where it will from the convenience side and that perspective, we've seen a huge growth in specialized cuisines. So, a big trend in Oaxacan cuisine from Mexico, and suddenly we kind of started hearing about insects and grasshoppers in our food. And I think these kind of types of trends from particular regions of the world, I think we'll see a lot more in African cuisine and different places in South America. And I'm talking about like smaller regions where there's a specialized type of cuisine that may not be kind of written about or documented, but somebody has kind of gone out and come back and opened up different restaurants there, and suddenly there's kind of there's a new trend in it for a particular region of food, and I think that will be will certainly continue. But in terms of convenience, I think the market for food is just expanding more and more. People have so many different needs. Food delivery and that type of convenience is growing. Of course, the meal kit and delivery services and all these kind of types of innovations are very stable kind of businesses now. And people want convenience, but they still want to know how to cook, and they still want to experience food, and they still want to watch it on social media and how to cook things and prepare things. And everyone's still obsessed with, or will always be obsessed with food. But I think they want both. I think people will want kind of the tradition, and they'll want to learn more about how to cook and prepare their own food at home, and they'll want more different types of convenience foods. And then a lot of restaurants are kind of opening up or not even restaurants, maybe food, let's call them food businesses, where they might have, one or two menu items available for takeaway, but it's amazing, or it's really specialized, and it's fantastic. So I think really the increase is going to be in the standards and the service of the types of food businesses that we see. But I don't think tradition will ever die out.
Yeah, well, let's hope not.
Yeah,
it'd be a shame to not kind of have a nice special occasion, sit
I
down
think
meal
we'll always
sometimes.
have that. Yeah, it's something that's it fluctuates kind of in the need. I think there was maybe 15 or 20 years ago that was kind of what everyone was doing. Everyone wanted to eat out all the time, and it was a different stage in the economy as well, maybe. But I think it's something that'll always be enjoyed by people for sure.
Definitely. So have there been any industry trends that kind of surprised you for either how popular they were and how strong they were, and whether they're still around, or ones that have just sort of fizzled out?
I think in terms of strength, it's definitely the plant-based culinary arts. Plant-based cooking, in terms of people wanting to learn more about the cooking styles. People are definitely changing their diets. People are wanting to eat and learn more about fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds. And people are maybe not necessarily eliminating meat and dairy from their diets, but they're certainly changing how they eat and maybe reducing that. And not everybody, but a lot of people, and particularly the younger generation, are very much kind of more aware of kind of the trends in plant-based, and they're very much kind of interested and keen on that. So I think that the plant-based industry is massive and growing and growing and growing even more, and on all levels in terms of the restaurants that are opening. Some famous chefs have, completely converted their restaurants to more plant-based. Menus are changing. I think we see a huge amount more of the convenience style of foods and the I suppose maybe the fake meats and the processed foods. When we look around, we see a lot more of that. When we designed our program in Le Cordon Bleu for our plant-based culinary arts, it is immensely popular, and we have a lot of students really keen and interested in wanting to learn more and more. So that there's massive interest in plant-based patisserie, and what can you use to substitute eggs in baking. These are really fascinating aspects that we've done a huge amount of work on. How can you make an amazing ice cream that is dairy free, and desserts and cakes, and looking at kind of the bakery side, then looking at how are great ways to use beans, peas, and lentils and legumes, and creative ways of working with vegetables. I suppose gone are the days when it's like, where's the what's the vegetarian dish of the day. It's really is it's a fascinating area now, with the kind of the global information out there, and the influences from different countries. It's quite spectacular, really. So that's definitely one of the areas that's very much going to grow. People are interested in from a health aspect, from environment aspect, the animal welfare, and very much from an innovation side as well. So the culinary innovation aspects of vegetables and the and plants is a very exciting space.
Definitely.
The innovation in sweeteners and the gastronomic techniques and the use of ingredients that are available is phenomenal. Yeah.
Fantastic. Lost my place now. 1 minute.
Yeah, and also from the international kind of cuisine aspect, the Indian cuisine, Mediterranean, Japanese cuisines, Mexican cuisines, to give a few examples, Middle Eastern, they all have really a real depth and basis in utilizing plants very well. That's kind of been incorporated in their tradition and food culture for hundreds, thousands of years. And I guess now what's kind of happening is that this information is just kind of more available, and people are just very interested in how the plant how to use plants in a very interesting way that emphasizes the beauty and the taste of dishes, and that's that kind of fusion and dining experience is definitely a trend. It's not a trend anymore. It's very much ingrained in what people are encompassing into their lives. So that's fundamental.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that you expected that was going to be a proper trend that didn't? Lost my words now. Sorry.
Something that didn't come to life that thought we would. You kind of got me there. I'm trying to think of something.
I think a few years ago they were trying. There was a real heavy push. I know you mentioned about insects and things.
Yeah.
There was a real heavy push for that a few years ago, when they were including it.
Yeah,
with flowers.
I think I've actually already hit on it. That is probably one. There's quite a big. It was a very exciting one, the insects and grasshoppers, but there was also a big kind of feeling, or do we really want to go there? And I think what happened at that point, kind of, I suppose it crossed over with the surge for plant-based proteins, and it kind of sparked I suppose, conversations on, should we be eating more insects? Is that, is this going to be a thing? Do we need to do that? And then it was kind of like, people were kind of like, oh, hey, wait a minute, there's all these grains and there's all these pulses and legumes, and we've got protein and all. So it just suddenly kind of exploded this kind of protein based, or where we were kind of going to get this key nutrient from, other than directly from animals. So I think it was kind of all part of that side of things. But no, I didn't really expect that we'd be kind of, crunching on grasshopper toppings on our hummus just yet. But it's huge in in Mexico. It's a real specialized delicacy. And I think that's important, because it was kind of presented to us on maybe this side of the world as kind of a trend and exciting. But if you go to Mexico and you dine in a restaurant, and, there's certain times of the year, or like special, special periods and special dishes that is accompanied with, it's not a solution for everything. It's a delicacy. So that's really important, that when we take something from another tradition and culture, that it's appreciated in kind of the nature of how it had evolved to be there as well. So yeah, it's something definitely to be appreciated in the right place.
Yeah, of course. I think also, certain competition programs on television that, present certain foods as a challenge, as it were, naming no names. I don't want to slander anyone. But, kind of presenting bugs and kind of similar, quote unquote, gross foods really doesn't help. And I think it's just a mindset shift that needs to happen gradually. And
but again, that's it. It gets people thinking. It's fun. It's part of entertainment as such. It's an interesting concept. There was a lot of people researching it, and a lot of information out there kind of on different kind of trends that may take off or may not, or maybe they're paused for a while and come back later in a different way. I mean, it's good to get people thinking and talking. So yeah, and at the end of the day, a lot of the industry and what we do, there's always going to be an entertainment aspect.
Well, that's true. It's all about the entertainment, really.
Yeah, exactly.
So my final question for today for you
is,
and this is on all levels, whether it's at the most basic level or at the high professional level, why is a culinary education so important?
Okay, well, I think coming to a school or getting a solid culinary education is really key for several aspects. So number one, it's about the skill development. So you may kind of walk into the industry and get a job, and you learn a lot on a job. Coming to a culinary school, you're going to really learn the foundations and the basics of the cooking skills, the culture and the history of why these particular skills are present, and how they work as a basis. So once you learn these skills and start developing, that's when you can really bring in your own creativity. So our students, say on a basic level of whatever program it is, cuisine or pastry or plant-based or nutrition programs, they've got to learn kind of fundamental skills, knife skills, food safety, looking at the basis of sauces, and really understanding ingredients and what they do. And then they can start understanding the food profiles, the flavors, what works well together, presentation skills, and they build up over a period of time through practice, through feedback, through communicating with their chefs, and understanding each other and students. And then when they come to higher levels of their culinary education, they'll really learn a lot more from each other and from the chefs that are the teaching chefs' experiences and their lectures, and they'll start to understand all of the different elements that come into food, because food is connected to everything in the world. In so many different ways, and they're starting to learn from their finance lecturers or marketing, or from if they're gone on to do a master's, they'll be looking kind of more at the depths of the academic side of innovation, and really developing, okay, well, how can technology be used for food and this type of thing. So it really is about building those essential skills, and going back to even my own career, like you have to understand how a kitchen works. You've got to do every single job within the kitchen and really understand the perspectives, and then you'll know what really kind of attunes to you, and what sings to you or speaks to you, and really kind of create your own unique space there. Then it'll you'll learn a lot about entrepreneurship, and you'll also have great industry connections, because once you come to a culinary school, and if you're in a class of, say, 16 in your group, and there might be 400 other people that are around the building at a time, plus all of your chefs, and plus all of the other programs that are happening, you'll know a lot of people. And when you go out into the industry, you'll have this global connection, which is really important. And then there's the history, the influence. So like the French culinary system is so classic and so renowned. Having that basis of skills is incredibly important to build those classic techniques, and they're applicable to every kitchen environment and whatever you decide to do afterwards. So yeah, and also this reputation, the reputation of the school that you go to, or the culinary education you get, serves you well in your future as well.
Fantastic. Elaine, that was absolutely fascinating, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much. It was really nice to talk to you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Beyond Food and Wine, a Le Cordon Bleu podcast. Keep up to date with all our news and episodes by following us on social media or by signing up to our newsletter. Links are included in the episode notes. Until next time, à bientôt!